Hello, hello. Oh, it's not turned on yet.
I think it's 6:02.
Okay. Yeah. And you're right. I didn't think that you would be starting on time, but that's good.
Yes.
Because this is rush hour,
Right.
Georgia Avenue.
Oh, I know.
Like it took me like 15 minutes to get here.
I am so sorry. Can we start?
Yeah, I'll be here. If we have to.
Yes.
I would prefer to be home a little more.
Okay. You want a couple more minutes?
Yeah, like 5 minutes.
Okay. 5 minutes.
We have one question from Ms. Margaret Jenkins about lighting in the community.
So, is it possible? Babe, can I have my phone for a sec? I just want to check the time. It's probably good for me to put my phone away. Oh, I think it's been 15 minutes.
They were out.
Don't drive the day or two before Thanksgiving.
It's about to be a year in January, so I started. No, I work for that. I work for that. Yeah, I work for that. Here's my card.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a difference between flying in a plane and at least you're moving versus sitting there.
Well, I mean, it's interesting.
One of the people.
Car covers?
If that's something, so don't want to forget that. If that's something that the police would cover, because they are offering door locks to people, and also a rebate for Nest cameras.
Okay. I think that's a perfect question to ask. I haven't heard anything regarding the police
But I mean,
department coming.
maybe it would be a consideration, because we're here to look at what are the resources and what things can be done that aren't currently being done.
No, there are only like 3 or 4 folks, like one is online. Of course,
I think I'm going to use your example and put my stuff here. Maybe we would be fine with this one.
As long as we have the discussion and then anybody can come back with, see
You told me.
proposals.
Time. Okay, let's do it.
Time.
I can talk. You still do it.
Is it live now? Hello, hello. Okay, I can hear me. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our combined forest, I'm going to move because this is getting in my ear and I'm hearing echo. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our combined community meeting that is being held between Forest Estates Community Association and Forest Grove Community Association. As you're aware, we are here today to meet with county officials to discuss our concerns about recent car break-ins and the intensity behind those, particularly through the months of September through December. We are here to discuss what resources are available, what plans are in action, and what we can expect as a community to deter car break-ins in the future. So I am going to kick off the meeting with asking our panel to just say their names and their titles. Following, Commander Kokinos is going to give a high-level overview of the crime that we've been experiencing with car break-ins. My name is Karen Maryshow, and I am the Forest Estates Community Association board member, and my title is Inclusivity Coordinator. Over here by the wall is Nandini. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Nandini Arun Kumar. I'm the secretary of the Forest Grove Citizens Association.
Thank you. Would you like mine or yours? Or okay. No.
Can you hear me now? Yes. I'm going to get up just because and I'm going to do a little bit more than just giving my name, because I need to give you background before we start with the police. And I have done these meetings with civic associations since I got elected, and that background is very helpful. It will take me only 2 minutes. Again, my name is Natalie Fanny Gonzalez. I'm your council member for District 6. I was elected in December 2022, and since I got elected, number one issue around my district has been public safety. And I've been having these type of meetings since December 2022 throughout the district. And it's a combination between folks who do not live in Montgomery County and come in here, especially using the metro, juveniles as well, from fentanyl use all the way to carjackings and stealing from people. So it's a variety. And I'm going to have our police department to specifically talk about what's happening in your own neighborhood. But I do want to emphasize the fact that I have done 2 major public safety meetings in my district. The first one was on the drone program. It's a special drone that we have in Montgomery County. We have over 200 people from across the area, including from Forest Glen, coming in to learn about it. It has been a tool that has helped the police department decrease the time for them to arrive when a crime is happening. Very successful. It's the first place in the state that has such a tool. So it was deployed in Wheaton and also in downtown Silver Spring. So that's number one. Number two, all that work, the sad thing has been that many of the robberies happening in stores, which is not your case, and he's going to talk more about it, has been happening by juveniles, kids who are 13, 14 years old. Some of them do live in our neighborhoods and go to the schools that my own kids go to. Fentanyl has been killing our communities, and the fact that kids get high, then desperate, and start stealing and walking into neighborhoods to steal has been a huge problem. But the response hasn't just been working with the police. It has been working with the Department of Health and Human Services to provide programming for kids and the help needed. I found out that when I got elected that we did not have a single place in the state of Maryland for a treatment center for kids using fentanyl, which I thought was shocking. I made myself, and I think Councilmember Evan Glass, who's going to speak in a moment, can testify that I took that in heart, and I was able to meet with the governor and also with the county executive and the team to ensure that we have the funds needed to provide treatment. Right now, we have kids who live in this area, Silver Spring, Wheaton, Glenmont, Aspen Hill. We have 32 kids who are part of this treatment center, getting them clean and stable so they can come back to their communities. And that's a small step, but it links with all the efforts that we're doing on public safety, which connects with what you're experiencing in your community, and I felt important to state that. With that, I'm going to give the mic to Councilmember Evans.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Fonte Gonzalez. Karen, thank you for helping organize. I also want to give a shout out to my good friend, one of your neighbors, Rick Kessler, who contacted me, emailed me, texted me to let me know about this issue in the neighborhood and to let me know that a lot of you were concerned as well. And I reached out to Councilmember Fonte Gonzalez, and I'm glad that she and all of you helped organize this. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Evan Glass. I'm one of your at-large council members. I'm in my second term. My husband and I live in Silver Spring. We live in Indian Spring, just behind Blair High School, a neighborhood just like yours before the Beltway. It was one continuous community. And to be additive to what Councilmember Fonte Gonzalez said, I'll share with you a broader perspective about the Silver Spring Wheaton community and what's being done and what has been done. Last year, I worked with a number of colleagues and we introduced a nighttime safety bill, recognizing that there was a lot of activity that was happening between 2 and 5 a.m. I'm sure you saw it on Nextdoor. It made the news all too often, and what was happening was there were establishments that were still open that were occupying way too much time and resources from our police department. And so what we did was basically say all businesses in Silver Spring and Wheaton and Montgomery County basically need to close at 2 o'clock. You know, the bars, restaurants have to close at 2, so everything should close at 2. It was the fair and equitable thing to do. And just in the last 2 weeks, the Police Chief Yamada, presented to the council and said that that law has preserved resources, and Commander Coquinos can talk more about that as well. But we are taking steps to make sure that the neighborhoods are safe, that our nightlife and downtown businesses and establishments and those that attend and patronize are safe. And it is a regional effort as well to make sure that DC, Montgomery County, and Prince George's in particular, we have police departments that all communicate, because here we are straddling the Beltway, which is easy in and easy out for all too many people. And I know that's a theme that you'll hear more about. But I appreciate you all galvanizing, reaching out to us, and I'm glad we were able to make this happen before everyone goes on vacation so that you can feel safe.
Thank you.
You got it.
Okay, good evening. Thanks for having this meeting. We don't want to meet under the circumstances, but we do like meeting with the community and sharing information and obviously hearing concerns. So I'm Jason Coquinos. I'm the commander of the 3rd District. I'm going to give a brief overview rapidly for the interest of time, and then we can get more in the weeds on what we want to talk about. But there's a lot of information that I think you all should know, and I think you'll find it interesting. So the 3rd District, which is where you all reside, is the whole East County, from Burtonsville and the Howard County line all the way down 29 and all the way down to Washington, D.C. So it's a pretty large police district. We're broken up into 3 areas. Ida is up north, Henry sector is the Four Corners, Hillendale, and then George sector is downtown. You all live in the George sector. You live in George 2 specifically. Why I bring that up is because you all have access to things on our website and different stuff like Data Montgomery, and the police districts run opposite of the numbering of our political districts. So Lieutenant Gallador is here. He's the lieutenant. I'm the commander. We have, each sector has a deputy commander. Tony is over the George sector. That's downtown Silver Spring and up Forest Glen area as well. So essentially, when the theft car break-ins happened in December 2nd, that was a little dot on the map blinking that is very unusual in the sense of, I'm going to share with you the crime data I have for your neighborhood, and then I'm not doing this to minimize, because theft from auto and even one incident in anyone's neighborhood is frustrating and it's unwelcome. But I want to share why I found it surprising, because your neighborhood is right next to 495. And if you look at the crime around the whole county, you see a lot of crime is clustered around our major arteries and our interstate highway system. And that's because, listen, we have folks that live in the county that commit some of our crime, absolutely. But especially in Silver Spring, we're a border district. What I mean by that is we border Prince George's County, Washington, D.C., so we have neighbors, right? Gaithersburg is insulated inside the county, right? So our problem here is that we get a lot of criminal activity coming from those other jurisdictions, and they use the main arteries like Georgia Avenue and New Hampshire Avenue, and they use the Beltway, and folks get off and they victimize our areas that are very close to paths of exit, right? So unfortunately, you all live right next to the Beltway, which makes you a easy hop off, do some things, and leave. Now, the good news is that prior to this incident, and I'll share some data with you, you all are not even a discussion in our weekly crime meetings, because good news is, even though your proximity to the Beltway, very low, very safe, very, very good place to be. Obviously, this incident, this spree that happened on December 2nd, we can talk about more, was very troubling to us, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But just to paint a picture for you all, you are in, each area is broken up into neighborhoods. They're called police reporting areas, PRAs. So 168 and 169 are your areas. That's east of Georgia Avenue, from Dennis south down to the Beltway. So those two, that's your neighborhoods there. All the crime that's happened in the last year is on this sheet of paper, which is very little. It's 5 categories. You've had assaults. There's been 26 of them. They're all clustered at the hospital, with the exception of 6 for the whole year. And those were domestic arguments, things of that nature. So if you look up your crime and you say, we've had 26 assaults in our neighborhood, no, it's at the hospital. The hospital pulls a lot of crime because things are happening there, okay? Burglary, for the whole year you've had 2. That's where someone's house was broken into. Those were both on Forest Glen Road. Last year, to compare, you had 3. So one was in May, one was in July. Vandalisms, these are things that people are destroying property and breaking car windows and different things. All year you've had 8, you had 7 last year. Of that, though, 3 of them were from the hospital. It's someone breaking something in the hospital and then reporting it. 3 vehicle incidents, and then 2 buildings had some damaged property, but they were not residential. So then we get into why we're here. So stolen cars. Stolen cars, good news is you're down 66.7% this year in auto theft. You've only had 3 cases, and I'm not saying this is okay, I'm just telling you compared. 3 auto thefts for the whole year in your area. Where we are seeing an increase in your area is auto part. So we've had 16 instances, and if anyone's curious, I do have the month breakdown. But 16 cases of auto part theft. What is that exactly? That's people that have their airbags stolen, their wheels stolen, some other accessory taken off their vehicle. And then the theft from autos. This year, we've had 17 incidents of theft from auto in your neighborhood. And the most alarming and the most largest chunk of those numbers came on December 2nd, which is obviously what has had this meeting arise. So I say that not to minimize what we're going to talk about, but I want to share, just for your own awareness, what's going on just down the road. So we go down Georgia Avenue into downtown. This year, 222 cars broken in just in the tight downtown, and 173 cars stolen downtown. When you get up to Other parts of White Oak, right around New Hampshire Avenue and Colesville Road, 150, and this is a small neighborhood. Actually, the area is a little bit smaller than you all. Now, what can be said is some of these areas are a little more dense, so there's more population, so we do need to be careful with that. 155 cars stolen, 98 broken into. Up in Briggs Cheney, 146 cars stolen, 80 broken into. So we have some problems with this. And it's one of our most leading number of crime in the district. So I say that not to minimize what's going on in your neighborhood, but just to show that we're having a significant issue with this. Now, there's a couple of things that are causing that. One, the proximity of the highway and the main arteries. Two, we are getting a lot of juveniles, particularly from Prince George's County and Washington, D.C. Some are adults, but we see a lot of juveniles, particularly in stolen cars. We've been getting a lot of arrests lately, which we can talk about some of those. And we are finding kids in stolen cars that are out breaking into cars, and more frequently, we're finding them in possession of firearms. So we are seizing a lot of illegal firearms through our proactive efforts, traffic stops, surveillance officers, our drone, different things like that, that we're making arrests on that. So that is a crime snapshot. So I say that for twofold. One, the thefts and stuff, we want to take those seriously. We want to talk about those. But I also want you to leave here tonight going home feeling good about where you live. And although we did have this incident, there is no other crime. There's no violent crimes. We have had no shootings, no robberies, no violent assaults where people are stabbed. So that is all good news. We still have work to do. We have to address these issues. But I want you to feel good at least about that. So.
Thank you, Commander. And so we'll be leading into asking questions. I did want to make a comment just from reviewing messages on the listserv. While it's crucial that we have this data, which is very important, my concern is about reports that are not made to the police. Because December 2nd, yes, it was an egregious day. There was a lot of cars that were broken into, things stolen. But that's not the only day that this has been happening. There had been intensity around break-ins and stolen car parts and the car theft really around October, end of August. And so I wanted to just point that out there to you. So at this time, I'd like to open up the floor to community members that may have some questions. I just ask if you could please state your name. It'd be helpful to know the street that you live on and the neighborhood. And then if you could share your experience, specific area of concern or question. We're trying to keep it at a 2-minute minimum. Certainly, because we have people asking questions here as well as online, we're going to be triaging. So if we have time, toward the end and people have more than one question, happy to circle back to facilitate that. This is our meeting. This is a community meeting, so it's our time to be heard. So would someone like to ask a question or voice a concern?
Hello, my name is Robert Gallarza. I live on Myrtle Road. I would just like to second the notion that based on our listserv, the numbers you gave don't seem to be accurate in terms of the actual crime that's been happening. I went back and tried to count through all of the different forms. It seems that we've had at least 75 car break-ins since the last 4.5 months. And so I just want to say that my question, though, is more directed to you, Commander. What's the clearance rate for all of these crimes?
Yeah, so I'm going to touch on two things. One, I should have gave that disclaimer before I shared the data. Our data is only as good as the data we receive, right? And I will tell you that not only in your neighborhood, but frequently, crime is underreported. So a lot of times, especially with these car break-ins, nothing was taken or some loose change was taken. I don't want to bother the police with that. No, we need everybody to call And furthermore, we need people to call, and you're not bothering us when you see suspicious things too. We just made an arrest, and it was not the same people as the people that came to your neighborhood, but just over, it's still in your sector, but it's closer to Four Corners. We got two guys at like 3:30 in the morning breaking into cars. And we got them because an alert community member called us, whether their camera went off, they were alerted in some way, and they immediately called. And our midnight officers, we'd already increased after your incident, we've increased the awareness and the best we can, the patrols by our midnight teams. All these things are happening between like 2 and 4:30, 5 in the morning, generally. So our overnight shift, we try to get them to drive through, and we're doing some other things I could talk about whenever as appropriate. But we did make an arrest because somebody called. So not only reporting crime, but also telling us when you see something suspicious. So these cases, the theft from autos, they are very difficult to solve in the sense of we look for evidence that's left behind. So in the case of the incidents that happened on December 2nd, because there were so many clustered, we actually had our forensic services section come out, the crime scene unit, which is unusual for a car break-in. They usually come out to homicides and things like that. But when we have a situation that is not just a one-off, in this case it was multiple vehicles, we asked for them to come out and process the scene. Now what happened is we had some video from neighbors, which is helpful as well, and that does help us sometimes solve crimes. But in this case, these individuals, they're professional in the sense of they're young, but they're professionally do this probably almost every night. They're wearing gloves, they're wearing masks, they have hoods up to cover their identity. So there was a lot of pre-thought into this. And so when we look at the solvability of these, many thefts are low solvability. Doesn't mean that we don't solve them. I mean, we've had cases where we have. If we can get a fingerprint, in this case, that's why we had the team come out to dust for fingerprints. If we can get maybe a neighbor's camera sees a car that they get into that is going to be stolen. They're all driving stolen cars. But the good thing is, even if it's a stolen car, we can then put that in and see where else they've been, right? So there's a lot of investigative things we can do depending on what clues are left. But frequently, the solvability is low, to be quite frank. I'm not happy about it. It's just how it is. And if we don't have any evidence left behind, the other issue is that you can do technology-related investigations, such as cellular tower dumps and things of that nature. The issue is when we dump a cell tower, it is very intrusive. We get everybody's phones, right? So, and we got to weed that out. So the courts, it's not a free-for-all on that. The courts are more restrictive now than they have been on our ability to just we have to do a search warrant, but to collect that data. And then we collect that data from a one-time cell dump, and I have to be able to find a way to root out who lives in the neighborhood and who doesn't. So frequently it requires multiple different tower dumps and analysis. That's a very lengthy process. And phone tower dumps work well when we have a group of criminals that hit this neighborhood. Then they went to this neighborhood and this neighborhood. Because then what I can do is dump all those towers. I can immediately get rid of all your phone numbers because I see the common number in all these places at the time of all these crimes. So those are techniques that we can do. It's difficult because in your case, these individuals hit your neighborhood, and then we don't have them anywhere else in the Silver Spring area doing the same thing. Presumably what happened, assumptions are dangerous. They got off the highway, they hit your neighborhood, they got on the highway, and went right back east towards College Park. So that's some of the difficulties with the technology. We do have some court limitations based on the type of crime, and unfortunately, a theft from auto is, depending on the value, but it is a misdemeanor. So the courts are less generous with us. They're more generous when it's a felony, or especially a violent felony, obviously, but they look at the type of crime when they determine how intrusive we can be into searching certain evidence. So, would you like me to, I have a question from the community. What are you doing about this since this happened? Great question.
We're going to put that right back at you.
Okay.
We're going to put that right back at you. Am I live? Okay. All right. Anybody else would like to share a concern, question?
Yes, in regards to theft from vehicle, is there anything that people can do that effectively dissuades people from this happening?
Yeah, so there is no magic solution, but I'm going to give you some things I think that can help, okay? Number one is lock your car doors. We say that all the time, but generally, now I will say generally, because recently we've had a little bit of a change. Generally, in the past, they have not broken windows. They go around the neighborhood and they try door handles, and they find cars that are unlocked, and then they enter them. That is the majority of the car break-ins are unlocked vehicles. So lock your cars. Don't leave any valuables in your car. I know all of this is annoying to have to say. You should have privacy in your own vehicle in your own neighborhood, but not leaving valuables in your car, locking your cars. Don't leave a spare key in your car. Don't leave the spare key to your significant other's vehicle in your car. So what we've had happen is, let's say I have a car and my wife has a car. I keep her spare key in my car, because, oh, well, what if she needs it? I can drive it to her. Well, then I come home in a rush because I'm excited to see Jeopardy, and I get in the house. I left my car unlocked. Well, what happens is the guys come through the neighborhood. They check the door handles. My car's unlocked. Now they find the key. They hit the button. My wife's car unlocks. They drive away with her car. So that has happened before. All things come around full circle. Remember the club used to be pretty cool back in the day? Well, the club is coming back around to being cool again, to the point where I think we do have some that we can give out for free if anybody wants them, and we can talk. Not today, but we will get them to you. Yeah.
Can you share how they can get the club or wheel lock, right?
Yeah. I don't think it's the club. It might be something different.
The wheel lock.
Yeah. Yeah. The club is the brand. So there's that. I will say when it comes to there's been three things that have escalated recently, which is and it's a regional issue, by the way. This is all the whole area. Is we're getting wheels are stolen off of cars. So they're putting them up on blocks and taking the wheels, and this is everywhere. So we're encouraging people to get, this is only in certain models like certain Subarus, Hondas, Toyotas. We haven't seen this on pickup trucks or anything like that, or SUVs. But if you are one of the folks that own those type of vehicles, there are lug nut locks. However, don't leave the key for the lug nut in the glove box. You want to keep it in your car, because if you get a flat tire, you need to take it off. But do yourself a favor, hide it in your trunk somewhere. Like, make it so it's not easy to get. These guys are opportunists. They get in the car, they're ransacking quick. They're not spending 2 hours searching your car. They're going to go through, get what they get, and keep moving. So hide your lug nut lock, but those help. Obviously, the one thing that I said is no magic solution is airbags. So they're breaking windows to get into cars now, which, again, on the scale of all these thefts, a lot of them are unlocked cars, but we have seen people break windows, and they're going in and getting these airbags. And it's a tough situation. They're organized groups. Now, this group that came here in December, that wasn't an airbag group. That was a car break-in, car stealing group. But we have multiple in the middle of the night. There's cops, there's newspaper delivery, for those that still get it, and there's bad guys and gals out there roaming around 3, 4, 5 in the morning. So we have people that are stealing cars, they're stealing airbags, and what they do is they steal the airbag, they take it to a dirty body shop where, so for example, if I own a body shop, Tony steals a bunch of airbags. He gives them to me. I give him, like, say, $200 an airbag or whatever. I'm just making up a number. But then you come to me with your crashed car. I put the stolen airbag in your car, and I charge your auto insurance the full price, $1,200, $1,500, $2,000, whatever it is. So there's a market for these black market stolen things that get resold and repurposed. Lighting, again. Lighting normally deters crime. Sometimes it doesn't. Some of these kids are really bold. Because here's the issue. You ask, why are they so bold? Because there's no consequence, or there's very low consequence. The juvenile system is broken in many regards. I'm not saying that we need to lock kids up in jail. That's not necessarily the solution. But there needs to be some adjustment in this. There's low consequence. If they're adults, when they get to jail for theft, and this is why we're having a huge retail theft problem also in our businesses and our stuff, is they come in and theft is being looked at. When I first came on the job, if you stole over $500, it was a felony. Well, now it's $1,500. So over the years, we've chipped away at the severity of theft, and we've treated it less and less, and now we have a theft problem. So when we catch people, they're going to court and they're not getting any jail time on the theft unless they're a significant repeat offender. So lights are good. Cameras are really good. Home cameras, I encourage it. Even if they're wearing gloves or something, sometimes we have some evidence that sometimes they're wearing a distinct article of clothing. We then catch them on a traffic stop or something later. We now can compare the video to who we know. So we want everybody to get cameras who wants to. There is camera rebates. I'm not sure if this neighborhood is part of it.
No, that one I don't think.
Okay, but the cameras you can buy, Ring or Arlo or Google, whatever you want. I'm not, for the record, I'm not giving a brand. But one thing you can do is you can register your cameras with us, mococonnect.org. And what that helps us is that we don't get to see your footage or anything, but if we have an issue, we can send you an email and ask you to check your camera. Sometimes people have cameras and we hear, well, had we known you were looking for video, we would have been able to look for you. Well, now if we have an incident and your camera's registered with us, we draw a circle on the map and it sends an email out to everybody because you've given us your email address, and it says, hey, we're looking for video 2 in the morning yesterday. If anyone has anything, please let us know, and you can share that way. The last thing I'll say is neighborhood watch or neighborhood involvement and being aware. Now, we don't want you going out there and confronting these people or trying to apprehend them or escalate anything, but it's as corny as it sounds, it's true. You see something, you say something, you're paying attention, you're aware. If you see something that doesn't fit, you all know your neighborhood best. You know what doesn't belong. You know what car, you're like, I've never seen that car before, and it's parked in front of Sarah's house, and Sarah doesn't own a car like that. Give us a call. We'll come check it out. You're not bothering us whatsoever. So that's kind of a long answer. I apologize.
Can I add two very quick things? Number one, something that I'm doing in my district is I'm holding community walks with the police. So maybe we can follow up as a follow-up. Karen, we can have you guys decide on a date. We can gather with the police department. I'm doing it with your colleagues and the other 2 colleagues that I have in my district, and walk in the neighborhood because people start feeling more confident and learning more, because I don't want this to be a one meeting and that's it and you don't see us again. But having it in the community as a follow-up, it's important. So that's one. And the second thing that I wanted to emphasize, anything that deals with criminal law, the crimes that the officer was talking about, that's done at the state level, not at the local level. The Maryland General Assembly, they meet from January to April. In the last session earlier this year, I went with local businesses from Wheaton, Glenmont, and Forest Glen, actually. We went to Annapolis. It was all over. If you get my newsletters, you know everything that I'm talking about. and we went in to testify in favor of a bill that will create stronger penalties for those who are distributing fentanyl. Again, connecting the juvenile situation with fentanyl is very important. That bill did not pass in the General Assembly, but it's going to be reintroduced by Senator Jeff Stryker, and he represents Forest Glen at the Senate level. So I had a meeting with Jeff actually this morning as a follow-up, and so once that bill is reintroduced this upcoming legislative session in Annapolis, I'm going to let you know and see if you guys want to come with us to Annapolis to testify.
Thank you. There's a question that I got on my cell phone. Somebody texted me, and a comment, which is that the Teams keeps crashing. So if there's a way that we can address that so that people who are on the Microsoft Teams virtual version of this meeting can participate, we would appreciate that. The question is, has there been any crackdown on dirty auto parts companies?
So,
or investigation?
Yeah, so it's complex. We recently, actually, in the 4th Police District, we did arrest a chop shop. They steal cars and parts and they bring them to a location and they mix them up. So yes, it does happen. Yes, we do have an auto crime enforcement section, that detectives that follow up on stolen cars and things like that, and dirty shops. I will tell you that the police department is significantly facing some significant staffing challenges, and that's not an excuse for anything, but what I'm saying is, in the perfect world, we could be doing more investigations and have more resources, but we do have a team of detectives that are doing them. But when you only have a certain number of detectives, you have to triage, right? What's the most likely success versus the case where it's probably not going to be solved? So you look at taking your limited resources and trying to get your most bang for your buck. So they'll look at these cases, and if there's a path to a solvability path, they're going to chase that down. If there's not, it doesn't mean they're going to throw it in the trash, but it's going to sit here, and if we can find some more clues later, we'll bring it back. So some of these shops, we catch them sometimes it takes longer, sometimes they go undetected. It just varies. And the more complex issue is, a lot of these shops, we're talking regional issues. So neighboring jurisdictions, it could be up in Baltimore, it could be in DC, it could be in Prince George's. Now, we do all work collectively between the different police departments, but again, there's challenges there when you're talking about different jurisdictions and what is their priorities and staffing abilities. So we've had cases where we say, hey, we'd like to go into this jurisdiction. We know someone that's doing something in our county, but they live down there, and they say, we'd love to help you, but we're completely don't have anybody available to help you, and so it makes it a little tough sometimes.
Here. So I'm going to push you a little bit on the underreporting issue, right? So I'm reading an email. This was 15th October, and if I can read. Sorry to hear that. I got a call back from the police this morning. They said they will not come out in person because they don't have enough resources, which you just said. But I explained this has been happening in the neighborhood on a regular basis for weeks. She said the repeated nature does not change the fact that we have insufficient resources. When I asked whether I or the neighborhood could do to help, they said, buy more cameras. So we have 2 of our representatives here. So, going back to the question that Robert asked about the numbers, there was an attempt to report these, right?
Yeah.
And I think it is underreported also because the community kind of felt that we weren't being heard and it wasn't being taken seriously.
Yeah, what you're speaking about is we have what's called a telephone reporting unit. So a lot of there are certain calls and call types that get diverted to a telephone reporting unit instead of an officer coming to your house. So what I think happens sometimes is You call in and they say, this particular type of emergency call is not something we're sending the officer to, but we're going to get you to take a report, but it's going to be over the phone, and then you get sent to a queue, and you wait, and generally they call you back. Now, the pluses with that is that we have individuals that can take reports over the phone, and you won't wait as long as you would if an officer, it could be 3-4 hours for an officer to come versus you call the telephone reporting unit. Sometimes what happens is either it's not communicated well or the telephone reporting unit calls you back and you don't answer. I think they try to call you back a couple times, but then if you don't answer for some reason, they mark it and they just move on. So there's a lot of difficulties with the underreporting. There's people that don't even call us. And then there's people that call us and they get routed to the telephone reporting unit, which, if not explained properly, could make people feel a certain way, like, oh, no one's coming. Well, you can still talk to somebody over the phone at headquarters. There's like a room where people that's all they do all day is take calls over the phone and take reports. But I have seen calls, because I'll check sometimes, and I'll see in the notes, it's called TRUE, Telephone Reporting Unit, attempted call 3 times, complaint and no answer. And they just put a note in there and move on. And then sometimes people's stuff don't get reported. So I will tell you this, I will tell everybody this. You can demand, and even though we have telephone reporting unit, you can demand an officer to come to your house if you want to be seen. Now, when you call in, they're not going to tell you that because they want to get people to use the telephone reporting unit because that's the most efficient thing based on the circumstances. But from my understanding, and I don't handle the 911 center, but I know that from the police department side with the chief, and we've always said, if a community member wants to see an officer and you demand it, we will send an officer. Now, it may take a little bit longer than anybody would like, but you can get an officer to your house, absolutely, if you demand it. Yeah.
I appreciate that question and the answer, and just want to continue on your thought about understaffing, right? Because that is wholly within the council and the executive side. We're about to enter into another budget season. The county executive introduces his budget by March 15th. And over the last number of years, it is absolutely true that we do have a staffing shortage. But Montgomery County is not unlike the district or any of our other surrounding jurisdictions. Now, that's not an excuse, but it's a statement of reality. And what we are trying to do is do things to incentivize more police officers to sign up and enlist within the county, and even more importantly, to live in our county, to live in our communities, which is the truest definition of community policing. So we have signing bonuses, and earlier this year, Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez, she didn't say it, but I will, she introduced and passed legislation to expand tax credits for property tax for more public safety officials to live in Montgomery County. So we're trying. We're doing what we can. I appreciate her leadership with the tax credits to further incentivize, but we still have more to do, and we're looking at what other jurisdictions around the country are doing as well to make sure that they get up to as a complementary staffing level.
Okay, there was a question in regards to lighting. So you had mentioned that, best case scenario lighting helps, right? So some of these incidences from my reading on the listserv involve areas where street lights were not working, where there wasn't enough lighting. Whose sort of bucket, if you will, does this fall under, and what will be done to ensure that there is proper working lighting in our neighborhood to deter crime?
2 things. One, if we can take a list of names of the streets where you see that we don't have lights. That'll be helpful. So let's get that rolling. That's number one. And number two, following up with what I said a minute ago of the community walk. This is the type of things that we do when we have a community walk, because people will say, you see that pole over there, there's no light. So each lighting pole has a number. So we always ask people, take a picture of the number, they'll give it to us, and then we'll send it to Pepco. And I have had so many, and I see hustle from my team, because that's basically one of the things he does, making sure we provide light to our neighborhoods. All you need to do is that. So I need your help to get that information. So you can either send it to us right away, places where we need lights, and two, once we schedule that community walk, that's one of the things we're going to be looking at as a community.
Okay.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Can you hear me? Okay.
Sure. I don't know if the
I'm not sure they're going to hear you on the.
folks at home.
Yeah. My name's Eileen Krause Jacobsburg, and I live on Belvedere Boulevard. And we were unfortunate enough to have 3 cars in front of our house that were hit. And I want to go back to that for a second, because nothing was taken. The windows were smashed. There might have been a couple of quarters, but I mean, dimes and nickels were left behind. They didn't get into the car. So my question is, have you found any motive for what that was that day?
For the, so the...
Was that on December, that incident?
Yeah, so in December we had some cars that were broken into for the purposes of theft, and then we did have some what we deemed as a vandalism, where your windows were broken, but like you said, nothing was stolen. So it's all linked together, whether it's a vandalism or a theft. It doesn't really matter, but things happened. So motive, I don't know. There's, other than the fact that from what I see on the street is a brazen disrespect for people's personal property and communities in our area. There are criminals that are in groups, and you wake up and you go to work, you have a hobby, you do things with your family. Individuals unfortunately wake up and they say, where are we going to go steal from today, or what are we going to do today? And there are people, for whatever reason, and we have done things that have prevented people from entering into that lifestyle, positive things. But unfortunately, no matter what, 99.9% of the people in our community are amazing. But there is a very small percent of people that choose to live a lifestyle of crime, whether they think it's cool, they're influenced in some way, that this lifestyle is prestigious. I don't know what it is, but you have folks that, so their motive is that's what they do. They get together, and what are the reasons for that? Well, that's a whole complex conversation. Do we have economic issues, substance issues, family issues? I don't know. Some people have all those things, and they still choose crime. So it's a very complex issue, but the motivation is it's Monday night, what neighborhood are we hitting tonight? And that's unfortunately what we deal with. We have right now, we've been doing this since I think right after we started it, when did we start the SAT thing? A couple days after this. So I said blank check for my guys. I have, just so you know, you all have a plainclothes team. They're called a special assignment team that works in the district. They're tasked with a lot of things, but they drive everyday cars. They're covert. I said, blank check, give me guys from all around the county, the police department, that want to come down here, and I want to flood Silver Spring in the overnight hours with covert officers hiding in all these neighborhoods. Every night they're out. They are chasing, getting into fights, catching bad guys. It is remarkable what's going on in the overnight hours. And it's diverse. We had just last night, our surveillance team downtown Silver Spring, they're watching, and they see an individual carrying their groceries, and a guy goes up and tries to rob them. And the guy dropped his groceries and took off running, but the surveillance officers followed these suspects. Our drone got there, was following them, and they tried 2 more robberies while the officers were getting set up, and they were able to make an arrest. So the plainclothes officers are out there proactively seeing things that aren't reported to us or it's in progress. Overnight, stolen cars coming up Georgia Avenue from D.C. They're breaking into the cars in the parking garages. They're coming up, passing through your neighborhood, coming up to Wheaton. They're in the train systems there. So, and we've been getting last night we got another illegally possessed handgun in a traffic stop. We have saturated in the overnight hours an immense amount of resources, and every night they're busy catching bad guys. The other thing we've done is the midnight patrol. We've had them be more aware and be trying to drive through as many neighborhoods. That resulted in the car break-in arrests. The neighborhood on the other side of Sligo Creek, it's east of you all towards Four Corners. So there's a lot happening in the overnight in response to that.
Hi. Okay. My name is June. I live in Brisbane Street. I have been living in this neighborhood for the past 15 years. And first, thank you for the policeman to come to this meeting, and thank you for council member to come for this meeting. And I really appreciated your help. And also thank you for the host to organize this meeting. And because I'm an immigrant, I don't quite understand a lot of things. Can we, after the meeting, send the information about the camera and the light thing on the list serve so we can follow up? And the next question is, I know when I file tax return, I know that some places they pay extra tax, and we don't. I know, like Tacoma Park, you pay extra tax. Bethesda, you pay extra tax. I don't know the detail. My question is, the policeman, do you send your force based on who pay more tax?
No, we don't. We do not. So you pay more tax. You pay county tax. Correct me if I'm wrong here.
Yeah.
You pay. This is a big test for me. Yeah. No, we don't want to pay more taxes.
No, I mean.
So you pay county tax. If you live in certain parts of the county that are incorporated, like the city of Tacoma Park, the city of Rockville, the city of Gaithersburg, you pay tax to the county and the municipality. You just live in Montgomery County. You don't have to pay any extra tax like Tacoma Park does, and you get the full services of Montgomery County the same as anybody else that lives in the county. So the way we deploy police is we deploy police based on data. So wherever the highest call volume is where we have more. So we have more officers where it's busier and there's more crime. So, for example, in George sector, okay, you have George 1, which is an area within your sector. That's downtown Silver Spring. I may have 5 officers patrolling that little area of, 5 blocks by 5 blocks. And then the rest of the George sector, which is Forest Glen, all the way Indian Spring, Sligo Creek Parkway, I only generally have 2 officers that I put up there. So it's not that you are getting less police, but it's because there's less problems and we have our limited resources where it's the most problems are happening. But we still have officers assigned to your area, the same as everywhere else.
Okay, my third question is, can you, because our neighborhood basically is a working class family, so is any way you can help our neighborhood by advertise more police move to our neighborhood? And also the same question for council member, can you help us somehow ask, get the message out, ask more police live on our neighborhood.
Do you have a lot of houses for sale? I feel like everybody loves the neighborhood. You live there.
I can say two things about that.
Sure.
Very quickly. The bill that I passed that Councilmember Evan Glass mentioned is the property tax, is a reduction on the property tax bill for public safety officers. That's the whole goal, to have more police officers living in Montgomery County. So it goes alongside of what you're saying. But I will say that there are apartment buildings in my district where the property manager has let officers live on the property for free, just because they want to have them there. So I know of a couple, one in Wheaton, another one in Glenmont, where that's happening. It's not common, and it's up to the police officer if they want to do that. But that option is there. But yes, we want to have more police officers living in the community. The good thing that maybe you want to talk about this, the cadet class that we have, the upcoming one, like the new folks, the young folks who want to be police officers. My understanding is the numbers look good and it's very diverse among people who graduated from Montgomery County Public Schools, people who already live here, and that's a good sign because we want them to stay in Montgomery County. And if they look like us, like they're a reflection of our community, that's a good thing too. So,
if I could just
yeah.
And I just want to add to what the commander said about the municipalities and the cities and taxes, right? So the city of Tacoma Park, Rockville, and Gaithersburg, they are cities. They pay additional taxes, and they have their own police department. And so the residents pay extra for all of those services. Tacoma Park also has its own library, and they have whatever they want to pay for. The rest of the county, Bethesda, Wheaton, Silver Spring, Durwood, only, there are no municipalities. So we all are supported by the Montgomery County Police Department as a whole. There is no special benefit. There is no special attention to one community or the other. I'm an at-large member of the county council. I represent the entire county, and I can assure you that people's concerns typically are shared across the county, and the different commanders have different latitude to manage their own area. And you're hearing from Commander Coquinos how he manages this sector, this district. And so I look forward to continued conversations with him and Councilmember Fani Gonzalez about potentially changing things, right, depending on what the staff levels might be. But just want to make sure that you're aware that no special attention is paid to any one area of the county over the other.
Okay, I have a question, and then I think we may have Q&A over there. I'd like to know what's going to be sustainable, not reactive, but proactively sustainable for our neighborhood moving forward. And what would that look like? Would that include drones? Can you share that with us, Commander? Because we don't want to be in a situation that we're here again next year or we're here again next month with the same issue. So we would like to address this and see what proactive measures that can be sustainable, that can be implemented, that will reduce these incidences of car crimes. So can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, definitely. So there are things that we're doing that are not sustainable, like my overnight flooding of the entire 3rd District with police officers. They're going to get burnt out, and I also got to give them back to the other parts of the county as well. And the minute that a higher priority crime trend pops up, I lose all those resources right away. So it's in the short term. So long-term sustainability, I think it's a collective effort. Obviously, some things that we talked about with community awareness, neighborhood watch, reporting crimes, different things like that. In the perfect world, I have more officers, which means I could put more officers out in neighborhoods and areas that aren't so resource-driven. Like, downtown really takes a lot of the George sector officers on any given day, and it does pull that free time that they can patrol the other parts of the sector. So we do have a larger police academy class than we've had. It is a good thing. We're in a good direction. We're not where we need to be yet. We're coming up to hopefully, we're constantly trying to make changes on how can we hire more officers. We're working on things with the state and some of the training commission rules. Right now we're in the middle, and I'm not going to talk about it, but I'll just say we're in the middle of bargaining with our police officers union. So there's going to be a contract that's going to be presented to the county executive, ultimately to the council. The thing is, we need to hire as many cops as we can, but we want good cops. We just don't want to hire people to fill seats. So we got to maintain standards because we and you have high expectations for how we perform. And so the issue is, if you think about this, everybody's fighting for the A caliber people. So, and I don't know if you see the same thing I do, but Montgomery County is a wonderful place to work. There's so many benefits. There's so many things. But the kids coming out of college, all they look at is the starting salary. I can't break in there to say, hey, there's so much more that's offered here. So we have to be competitive with that. That's something that's being talked about, that I know the council has talked about, looking at, because as we do things, our competitors are also doing incentives and other things to try to draw these people. And we're in a time where the private sector is there's a lot of good jobs in the private sector also. So it's a market that is very competitive. So long-term sustainability, one thing that we're doing is, if we can intercept crime before it gets to your neighborhood, ultimately that lowers the things in your neighborhood. So, for example, we currently have a district community action team and a special assignment team. These are proactive teams that no matter how bad staffing gets, my goal is I will kick, scream, and fight to keep those resources, because they are the uncontrolled units that catch crime before they victimize. So the gun seizure we just had was a traffic stop by our district community action team. When we take a gun out of a car and we arrest someone, we potentially just prevented a shooting or a homicide or an armed robbery. So if we can intercept respectfully, constitutionally, professionally, crime in transit before it gets to victimizing people, that's one way that we can hopefully try to, look, as a district-wide, a lot of our crime numbers are down significantly. Shootings are down significantly. Robberies are down significantly. And a lot of this is because officers now are re-engaging in professional, proactive policing, and they're intercepting folks. For example, we have a retail theft problem going on downtown. We know a lot of folks are using the metro to come up and commit crime. So we've started proactively working with Metro to catch fare evaders. There's data that shows people that jump the turnstiles are going on to commit other crimes, mainly a lot of times carrying weapons that are engaged in violent crime. So we try to pick them off when folks jump the turn, and a lot of these are juveniles. And then you see, okay, I got Johnny stopped here, and we look him up in the computer, and oh, he did a theft, he did a robbery 2 years ago, he did a theft last week, and so we're interacting with people that are committing other crimes, and so we're doing that proactively. We're also going to continue to, as we can, encourage officers, and I'll put you're going to be the second community on my list. One other neighborhood beat you out yesterday, but we are going to be doing more initiatives on what we call overlap days. So we have days where the schedules change between officers and they have a little bit of extra free time, hopefully. Sometimes they don't. They're doing this in the 4th District. We're doing it where we're going to be having high visibility patrols in neighborhoods that request it. I'm putting you down as a request. I assume you want it.
Between the hours of, what say we community, like midnight and 6?
Yes.
Does that sound about right?
Yeah, we'll also do it in other hours too, because but yes, midnights are the problem with the car break-ins.
I think if it's targeted during the times that we've been having issues,
Yep.
that would be good, knowing that there are limited resources with police. We don't want over-policing,
Yep.
and we also don't want, I speak for myself, racial profiling,
Yep.
because that has been an issue in the past with Montgomery County Police, given the data and the statistics that were provided in the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force. So I just want to be clear about that.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other topic for another meeting, because we have a lot of we have a lot of improvements there
And
with
we
stuff
have some
we've been
other
doing.
questions. Were you done, Commander, or was there
The
more?
last thing I'll say is the
Okay, yeah.
drones, because you brought that
yeah,
up.
Thank you.
So right now, our drone program, our Drone as First Responder program, it operates during very limited hours. It's not operating in the overnight that late. The other thing that we told everybody,
Can you share with us why there are limitations with that?
it's budgeted for only a certain number of hours. We are limited. We are working towards technological advancements that hopefully will remove the need for our rooftop contractors. We have to pay staff to be on site where the drones are positioned. There is technology available that we can put a drone in a box, and there's a lot of in-depth things with that, where we can basically expand the hours of the program while not increasing the cost. That's the goal. We're not quite there yet. We also have to work through some regulatory constraints, because you all live in the flight restricted zone for Washington, D.C. So we got to get them to approve our ability to try these different technologies. The other issue is, we have heard a few of these requests that are starting to come up about proactive patrol of our neighborhood with drones. Listen, I'll tell you this. Can it be done? It can be done. However, we do not do it. And we have told the community that's not what we're doing. If the community, this is a community-driven program. If all of our community said, hey, overnight we'd like a drone to patrol around, and you can see on infrared if there's groups of individuals running between driveways, breaking into cars, it can be done. But we're not doing it because our community thus far, that is not something we've agreed to.
I understand. And is that something that if, for example, like FICA or with the FGCA community says, we want to do it, you'll do? Or does it have to be a county-wide consensus?
Yeah,
Okay.
I had over 200 people meeting in this library when we first introduced the drone program. It was a community meeting. Surveillance, privacy was the #1 concern from the community. And I take that very seriously. I will not gonna say yes to that, at least not until we have data, not until I hear from folks and have folks understand what that really means. So I'm gonna leave it there.
Yeah, and I will say this, though, from my understanding of the website is, yes, there were those concerns raised, but that was addressed by the drones only being targeted as body cam would on a police officer. But I'm not saying I personally want it. I'm putting it out there because it was a question, and I'm going to bring this over
So
for other
real
questions.
quick, so Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez had a series of really good community discussions, because there were a lot of questions about the drone program. Through the council's deliberative process, we approved the appropriation and expansion for the drone program, but there were a series of restrictions. The restriction, one of which was it could only be in response to calls. So that eliminates right now the proactive nature. The other aspect, which is equally as important, is the visual aspect is, for all intents and purposes, shut off in the transit to the site where the issue is being called. So it is not patrolling from liftoff to a home that has called and looking at what is happening across that way. And so those have been built in for privacy restrictions. Those are restrictions that the council put on the program. Clearly they could change if the will of the community wants them to, but those are the restrictions as they currently are.
Okay, thank you. So here are some of the questions Martha Jenkins had asked. Okay, this was already asked and answered about street lighting in the neighborhood, and Councilmember Gonzalez said send her the list, right, of the streets that need to have street lights repaired or where there's dark areas that are problematic. Janet Fox is asking, what do you think about setting up, I love this idea, target cars as a trap for the thieves?
So we
undercover stuff.
Yeah, we used to have a program like that, and it's since I don't know if anyone, for historical purposes, we had an auto theft unit. We got rid of it during the bad budget times. We just brought back an auto crimes enforcement. So some of our capabilities have diminished depending. Those things can happen, but we're not actively, necessarily doing that all the time. But it's something that hearing that interest from the community is interesting to me. It's been done before, but we usually now do different methods. But I'll note that as an interest of the community.
Well, was it successful?
We did have success with what we call bait programs. We've done a lot of bait programs over the years that are very successful. In areas where we've had high bicycle theft, we'll put a bait bike out. I know Lieutenant Galladora did it in Bethesda when he worked there. I did it in Germantown when I was up there. And there's a lot of bait operations that can be done and that do go on. But I will note your interest in that topic.
Okay, and Janet Fox asked another question. Are car alarms helpful?
Yeah, so again, things are going full circle, right? The car alarms. Car alarms are good if we as a society, I feel like, have gotten numb to the sound of a car alarm. But I think we need to shake loose of that, and I do think we need to get back to car alarms. And when we hear a car alarm, immediately calling 911 and reporting that someone's car alarm's going off, we think that there might be someone breaking into a car. So the way we've been successful with these car break-in arrests is when a community member calls us, aside from us seeing it ourselves with our officers, when a community member calls us and they're like, hey, I'm watching guys right now break into cars. They don't know we're coming. We can get there really fast like we did the other night in Four Corners, and we can get these guys. And a car alarm could be helpful to bring attention to the issue.
Okay, thank you. I think that if there's a car alarm going off 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, that will catch somebody's attention, and I think they would be more likely to call. But I think during daytime hours, especially with the hospital and all these noises on Georgia Ave, I completely agree with you. That's kind of, part of our background where we live. The other question is from Anna. How can we be comforted in knowing these car break-in crimes won't escalate to home burglaries?
So I can't guarantee anything. I will say from the past data that we know that an overwhelming majority of the car break-ins, they escalate sometimes to auto thefts. If they steal the car, depending on the type of car, if they find a key or things like that. But I would say a majority of the theft from autos are opportunists that are just going car to car. It's a quantity thing. We have had cases where a car break-in has led to a burglary of a house, but I would say those are very few on the overall scale. I mean, let's look at just this year. 305. We're at 580 or so car break-ins in the Silver Spring district, and to my knowledge, not one of them has, that I know of, and maybe if you know different, Tony, I don't think we're aware of any this year that have escalated to a burglary right after. I don't know. No. So.
Okay, thank you. And coming back to what you were talking about as far as your data and call-ins, I'd like to see if there's a way that we can get more accurate information. I know this lady here, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, Eileen. Eileen had mentioned there were 3 cars that were broken into. Was it the same night? Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm wondering about reporting. Does it count as one report if somebody says, I had 3 cars broken into? Is that one report? How is that reported? Because there is a discrepancy between the number of break-ins, windows broken, airbags stolen, wheels stolen, that we are reading on the listserv that is different from what you're reporting. So I'd like to understand the reporting process just to make sure, to hammer that out in case there are any issues with reporting, how it's reported.
Yeah, and maybe I should have clarified, and I used the word incidents in my description of the data that I have is, in her case, 3 cars, 1 incident. Now, we do count the number of vehicles, but it's only going to be 1 police report. It's not going to be 3 different case numbers. So if we have an incident like that, and that's why I was very careful to say, we've had these number of incidents, because there are these cases like in your situation where you've had 3 of your cars, but you got 1 police report number for it. So the data is, no matter what neighborhood, we're always not getting the full picture. So that's why I tell people, because even in Bethesda, I talk to people in Chevy Chase, and they're like, who cares? It was only $100 taken from my car. No, I need you to report it, because I can't justify putting extra cops in your neighborhood if I don't have the data to support it when we have limited resources. We're making data-informed decisions. So please call with everything and definitely report everything so we can.
So I wanted to follow back up on that. So the numbers you gave us were instances, but do you have a number for vehicles, like actual number of vehicles that were broken into, that had airbags stolen, that had wheels stolen?
Yeah.
Because there is a discrepancy in numbers, and that's something that we would want to make sure is reflected in police reports and data for our area, particularly if that would trigger any stepped-up patrolling in our neighborhood during the hours in which these issues are occurring.
So let me be clear on the reporting. If it's, let's say I live on Main Street and you live 1 block over on First Street, if the location is different, like in your case, you had 3 cars at 1 location at your house, so that's going to be 1 report. But if you're at a totally different location, that would be a separate incident. So most, if not with the exception of yours and maybe 1 other, the incidents end up being 1 vehicle situations. Now, your case obviously is different. I think there was 1 other family that had 2 cars.
There actually were a number of cars in our neighborhood where either 1 or more vehicles, or more than 1 vehicle, was broken into in 1 incident. And also where there were multiple incidents where vandals came back again and then busted up windows, stole things out of the car. So I guess the issue is we want to be sure that all of this is being tracked, particularly if it's going to trigger any step up in patrolling during those hours. So how can we resolve that issue?
Well, it is being tracked for what we're reported. I think what we all can agree on is we don't have the full picture. That's clear. So I can tell you numbers, but it's clear that those numbers aren't correct, because we have evidence through the listserv that people are reporting on the listserv, but potentially not reporting to us.
Right,
so that absolutely is happening. So now, what I would encourage is for everybody here, and please share on the listserv and our engagement when we do it, we're going to keep doubling down on we need everybody to call and need to report, even if nothing was taken. If your car was rummaged through but nothing was taken, still call. That counts as a crime that we want to track. The more dots on the map, the more attention the neighborhood would get. Now, we all hope for no dots on the map. So dots on the map necessarily are not something we want. But if it's happening, we want to be to near perfect capturing of that information as we can. And if it's not reported, then we can't be 100% precise.
For example, very quickly, so I really want to make sure that you understand the importance of the community walk. And this happened in another part of my district. Same story, different cars vandalized. We did a community walk. And the beautiful thing about it is that people seeing police officers and seeing them face to face and exchanging information and having them giving their business cards made a huge difference, because the following day, when people saw somebody who did not belong in the neighborhood, they will call the police officer or send an email. So they didn't have this being afraid or being, oh, maybe it's not a big deal. It is a big deal. And the other good thing that happened, this happened in Aspen Hill, is that the police came back and they showed different photos of people who could have been, the suspect, and one member recognized the person. So success story, but it all it took is getting the community involved and working with us and having that walk.
I hear what you're saying, and thank you for sharing that. I think there's a balance, again, that has to do with our wanting to protect our community and not being hyper vigilant and calling police because we see somebody who looks different or a stranger. We have a lot of people who have moved into our neighborhood recently and who do move into our neighborhood because it's a very nice neighborhood to live. We don't want to cause any divisions or have there be any kind of racism that's occurring because somebody looks different, somebody's a stranger. There's a balance there, I think, in protecting our neighborhood and also having equitable and kind relationships with our neighbors.
And if I could chime in 1 second on that, because we have trained our supervisors that are hearing these calls to be on the lookout for any type of observable bias by the reporting party. A lot of times the police are being called to a neighborhood and we have to make contact with somebody based on a call that we're receiving from the public. Now, there are times where people call the public, or the public calls 911 and says there's a suspicious guy in my neighborhood, and that person may be of a different race or different background, and they were called on potentially because of that bias that the community member had. Now the officer is put into that situation to have to make contact with this person. So what we've done, we've trained our supervisors in bias recognition, is when somebody calls, and what I would encourage anybody who's calling, ask yourself, what about this person is suspicious? And what you want to look at is their behavior, their conduct, not necessarily who they are, because we have a very diverse community. But when you think about what are they doing that makes it suspicious? Are they looking into vehicles? Are they constantly looking around and crouching down, right? What are the actions and the behaviors? Because when you say there's a suspicious guy in the neighborhood, very likely the police may call you back on the phone and say, can you articulate to me what exactly is suspicious about this person? So those are the type of things that we've trained our supervisors to be on the lookout to reduce interactions that may just be because someone looks a certain way. So I would encourage anybody when you're, and we talk about this with Neighborhood Watch, when you're observing, when you're staying alert, focus on the conduct and behavior of individuals and not necessarily what they're wearing and who and whatnot, because the actions are what we want to focus on, not who they are.
Okay, there's some more questions. I think he was next.
So I just wanted to follow up a little bit about, maybe it's not necessarily directly related to the crime and how to stop it, but maybe it's more for the elected officials too. There's a festering sense of uncomfortableness and fear in our neighborhood, especially after that firearm was brandished. And Commander, especially for you to be aware, I've spoken to at least 3 people that live in my neighborhood who have never owned firearms before, who acquired them in the last week or two. And there's 2 questions that, I guess the first one's a question, the second one is hopefully something you can advise us on and agree with us. One is to explain, since this is a public forum, maybe you can do that. What is the right of a citizen in our neighborhood to confront someone brandishing a firearm to protect a car or their property that's on their driveway, number one. And number 2 is, hopefully you agree, how no matter how proficient you are with firearms, for a private citizen to confront someone with a firearm to preserve their property in that way is, and I guess I'll choose my words carefully here, infinitely stupid. And maybe you can comment on that, on both of those.
Yeah, so I mean, people have the right to legally purchase and possess firearms, but I think if you're going to do that, you need to be educated on the matter. I recommend people go to safety training. They have safes and things where they can securely lock these things. You know, the purpose of potentially owning a weapon is not to use it to go challenge people. You don't want to escalate situations. There have been cases around the country where individuals have made the decision to go out and confront this person armed. A lot of bad things can happen. We don't want anybody to get hurt. And also, if you do go out and let's say it escalates and now you use the weapon, what's going to come from that? Court, lives are injured. You know, it's a mess. It's really not a good situation. We advocate that if you see something, lock your doors, call 911. You can look out your window, take a peek, or go upstairs and look down or whatever, but don't go out and confront these people. It's not going to be good. When you have a weapon, it's if the purpose lawfully is for your protection, it's in your house, it's secured properly, you've gone to training. I recommend if you're going to own a weapon, you should go to safety training, go to range training, and your intent should be to possess that for inside your home for the highest level of you are death or serious bodily injury. It is a last resort, right? And that's what it is for police officers. Using deadly force is a last resort when it's necessary because of a life-threatening issue. We're going to die or get seriously hurt. So if someone is kicking in your front door, my recommendation, obviously, hopefully you're calling 911. If you have a weapon, retreat up, lock yourself into another room. If you're going to shoot someone, it should be you are backed in the corner, you have no other option, your fear of death or serious bodily injury, you've tried, you've exhausted. I've locked doors, I've tried to go upstairs, I locked myself in my bathroom, and this person is actively trying to kill or hurt you. If you have to protect yourself, then that's the situation. You have to protect yourself because you don't want to just lay there and get killed. But at the same token, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're creating the moment of that happening. So self-defense, everyone has a right to defend themselves. But escalating and encouraging an outcome, we want to stay away from that. So I don't know if that made sense. But
I guess it was more geared towards protecting the cars here.
Yeah, I wouldn't advise deadly force situations for protecting property. That's not, that's not a good situation.
Real quick, I appreciate the question, agree with your assessment, and there have been a number of neighbors throughout the greater Silver Spring area who have shared those images with me because of next door, people from Woodside, people from other parts of Silver Spring, and they too share the same concern. But as the commander said, we need to think of self-protection as a defensive mechanism, and we are all consumers of national news, and we have seen all too often what happens when someone proactively shoots somebody for a reason, and it is rarely a good thing. Rarely a good thing. Usually it ends in tragedy, and it ends in someone going to jail, someone killed, and national media attention. And so for whomever in this community is at a level of fear, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that they have been driven to buy a firearm. I think that's a failure on our part. I'm going to be very candid with you. But they have to be very judicious in how they use that.
Yeah, hi, name's Dennis O'Brien. I'm a 40-year resident with my wife on Forest Grove. going back to the previous conversation about suspicious and individuals. First of all, anybody after midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, who's walking down the street slowly, is suspicious. Yes.
Well, it depends. Again,
not walking a dog.
Yeah, I mean, there's people so for me, I'm out walking my dog at 1 in the morning. But not necessarily. You never know. Especially if you're on a main road. So these are the things, right?
Yeah.
If you're on a main artery, maybe someone's leaving the hospital, they're walking over to the metro or the bus stop. So you got to be careful. But again, it's the actions. What are they doing? If they're just walking normally, minding their own business, okay. But now they're looking around, they're peeking, they're trying door handles. Maybe they kind of walk into someone's yard. I think we all know we've seen what a person walking down the street minding their own business is doing, and so what you're doing is in your neighborhood you're establishing the norm, and when you see something that's abnormal, it'll raise a flag. You're like, huh. When you do that, and you look, ask yourself, what am I seeing that is making me feel this is different? Okay. And you kind of, that's because the thing is, you guys have the hospital near you. And there's a whole nother layer of complexity that's not related to this meeting with folks that escape the hospital, they're in the neighborhoods, they're jumping over the wall on the Beltway. So you may not have someone that's breaking into cars in your neighborhood at 3 in the morning. It could be somebody that just ran out of the hospital that needs help, and we want to deal with that a little bit differently. We take a different approach to that.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, these break-ins normally involve more than one person? Usually it's a team?
Generally, yeah, 2+
2+,
people.
okay.
Yeah, sometimes up to, usually, the average probably is between 4 and 6, depends.
4 and 6, that many. And last thing, since most of them between 2 and 5, that's kind of the sweet spot you said in the morning, sort of wee hours. Any casing going on during the daytime hours?
I don't know. I mean, there could be. I mean, I don't know how they pick their spots because the issue is theft from autos are very widespread. It affects every community, neighborhood in our community for the most part. Some more than others based on their proximity, but for us, that's why we have to be careful to reacting to. Like I get the daily report. I can tell you what every neighborhood on where car break-ins were the night before, and I go, all right, I got it figured out. They hit here last night. I'm going to put cops there tonight. Well, now they're over here. Now they're over here. It's so random that sometimes you can predict patterns and trends, and those are where we're more successful with catching them in the act. But it literally is. I don't know if there's a rhyme or reason. They just go where because your neighborhood got hit there on December 2nd, but across George Avenue on the other side, nobody went over there. So it's so odd, what they do and their patterns and movements.
Thank you.
Yep. One thing while we're in motion here, I keep hearing next door a lot. The 3rd district is going to be posting a lot more on next door. We had one officer that was doing a weekly post. We already were in talks based on community feedback. All of our community meetings, people say we want to see more next door. We're bringing you more next door here soon. We just got a new community service officer, Brandon McLeod, who is just full of energy. We are going to not only be doing a weekly post, but we're going to do more frequent posts because our community doesn't know or see a lot that's going on with these cases, these investigations. So we're going to start using Nextdoor to share more of what are we doing about these things and what's happening, and you can see the results and stuff. I'm on X, MCPD3D Commander. I post a lot on there about the great work that the officers are doing around Silver Spring specifically. So you can read,
the only one worth following.
There you go. Thank you. So follow me. Apparently, I got a.
But company included.
There you go. So I appreciate it. Yeah. So we put up stuff. One thing when I got to Silver Spring. Council President Stewart, our business community said, we want more messaging about what's going on. So there's so many different platforms. I assure you I can't be on all of them, but I know that Nextdoor is a big thing that people use, so we're going to do more of that.
We actually have, each of our associations have our own listserv, which are
Okay.
probably a little bit more dependable I mean, if they would be willing, if you'd be just willing to send it to some of us, that we could post it on our listserv. Because next door is kind of all over the place, and I think some people. Thank you. Yeah, it's.
Well, and this came up in another meeting, and I had the same response. At the time, I didn't have Brandon, but now we got him. So, if you want to email me. And I think you have the email address we've been talking on. If you want to email me with a point of contact for each listserv, one thing that we're going to start doing is, I talked about this, I forgot about it, you reminded me, because I only heard it from one other community, but when I heard it, I was like, dang, that's a great idea, is when we do our posting, we can also have a pre-populated blind carbon email list, so your email list won't be exposed, but we can send out messaging that we then can put out in your individual listservs. So I'm going to make a note this time to remember that, but I thought that was really good.
Okay. Thank you. And I wanted to respond to follow up with what you were saying, Commander, about reporting people in the neighborhood. We do have people that work in the hospital. We have people that don't work 9-to-5 jobs. They may work, at different places, nightclubs. I mean, we don't know. People are traveling at all different hours, returning home. So, I mean, I think it's all good to kind of keep in mind and keep in balance. And I agree wholeheartedly with what Commander said as far as, like, really looking at what suspicious behavior is instead of just thinking, well, there's somebody who's out at 2 in the morning, they must be up to no good, So I appreciate that sharing for additional information. There's a question here that came in. Are there any partnering incentive programs with auto insurance companies to help address the auto part thefts? Does anybody know that on the panel?
No, we work with the Yeah, we've done some. Yeah, we've done Hyundai Kia for reduction of auto thefts. That was a free software update with the police department, partnered with them. But we have not done anything with any of like Honda or anything reference airbags. Because the thing with the airbags is, so with the Kia and Hyundais, they were being stolen because of a loophole in the security program feature. Mm-hmm. So we identified that, we partnered with the manufacturer to get that loophole closed for people, which has led to a reduction in those auto thefts. Mm-hmm. The airbags, the windows are getting smashed and they're stealing the airbag. It's not like a loophole in any security system, so it'd be tough to partner with them on that. The auto insurance industry, obviously there is a whole thing there where they look at strategies to try to reduce theft and auto theft and programs and prevention, because obviously that helps the auto insurance industry. So we do work with them. And we have had some, like you talked about the bait car. Back in the day, we had a bait car that was donated by the insurance industry and things like that. So we've worked with them in the past. I'm not aware in detail what programs they're doing now, but there are communications with not only manufacturers, but different things like that do happen.
One question also was, as far as you're welcome. Thank you for coming, Councilmember Glass. One of the questions is with Honda, for example, with it being easier for people to lift an airbag with the Hondas, because I watched a video and it was, explaining how easily it can be done and how quickly, and the payoff for criminals to do it. Has the police been communicating with different auto dealers and shops to develop some kind of program that would dissuade them, or have them report when they think that there is something that's hot that's been lifted from a vehicle?
Not that I know of, because I would say a majority of our auto body shops are not buying black market airbags, illicit airbags, and I think the shops that are not in the business of cooperating, because there's so much money to be made in that, and so I'm not aware of anything with body shops. Obviously, if we catch on if we get a tip, and we're always accepting anonymous confidential tips that you won't have your name in, but if a body shop or anybody knows of a place that are buying these things, we definitely would like to know about that. So but those can be anonymous tips that come in. You could.
And another question that I had, it had to do with a license reader. That actually came up on the listserv. Do you have the capacity to do that? And if so, how would that be done, and what can we expect with that? And can you share with everyone, if they're not sure of what, that's what a license reader would entail or what that means, then that would be helpful.
Yeah, so there's a thing that's an automatic license plate reader. So essentially, the ones that the county owns, when you drive and it runs your license plate only against the stolen car database. So it's not collecting anything about where you're going and who you're shopping and whatever. But there are very limited of those in the county. That is a technology that other jurisdictions, like DC and different stuff, they put on all their main corridors. There's a lot of value in that. Right now we only have one on Georgia Avenue from the DC line. If we had more of them, those could be valuable, because what it does is we know that a lot of the crime that's being committed, like car break-ins and stuff, the suspects are using stolen cars. So if we can get a indication, if let's say a car got off the beltway and it passes one of our license plate readers and it goes off, the officers can start in that direction and maybe catch them either maybe while they're in the act. So that's a budgetary thing, because it's not just the equipment. It's not just the equipment cost. It's the licensing, the annual license fees. So we don't have a lot of them. Obviously, it'd be great to have more. There are private entities, commercial establishments and such, that choose, apartment complexes that choose to have their own license plate readers. I don't know the specifics of how that works. I know it's on private property. So you guys are different because you have the public streets, so that might be a little bit different.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Nancy.
Treat us as people who do not know what to do when an emergency happens, when we have a suspicious sound, hurt, or whatever. What do we do? There's a 911, there's a non-emergency. When do we call? Do we all call? What do you call for? Treat us like we know nothing and answer that question.
Sure. Nope, that's a good question, and a lot of people have that. All right, so I'll break it down to you what happens on the other side of the fence. So when you call 911 or when you call the non-emergency number, it all comes into the same place. The Emergency Communications Center is staffed with what we call call takers. That's their only job, is to pick up the phone and say, 911, what's the emergency? Now, when you call 911 or you call the non-emergency number, it's all coming to the same place, but they prioritize answering the 911 call. So what we tell people is, if it's an in-progress crime, if something's happening in progress, we want you to call 911. If you're reporting something that happened yesterday or occurred earlier, or I lost my passport, or some guy in Nebraska just opened up a line of credit in my name, those are things you want to call the non-emergency number for. So 911 is there's potentially bad guys here now doing something, and we need the officer to get there fast. If it's anything that is low level that occurred earlier, you can call the non-emergency line, which is 301-279-8000. So if you hear noises, if you see someone trying door handles in the neighborhood, if you hear glass break, or you hear a car alarm going off at 2 in the morning, just call 911. It's not bothering us. We'd rather you err on the side of caution than, because when you call 279-8000, it's not a priority pickup. You might be sitting on hold for a little bit because it's a non-emergency, and then emergencies are going to be picked up first. But we hear it all the time. Tony and I listen to a lot of these 911 calls, and someone says, 911, what's the emergency? it's not an emergency, but someone's here doing this right now. Like, well, no, there's a crime in progress that, I mean, you know, now sometimes we think emergency, someone's dying, they're shooting, there's an explosion, but really anything that is in progress where there's a crime suspect on the scene, to us, that is absolutely okay to be an emergency call. Yeah.
And I have a question here that I forgot to ask that came through Microsoft Teams as follow-up. When car was broken into recently, I guess this person's car was broken into recently, an airbag was stolen, contacted non-emergency line, and the officer noted they will not come due to not having resources. Does the commander agree?
Yeah, that's similar to, that is a county-wide police policy, so that's not, as the 3rd District Commander, I don't pick and choose for this district what calls go to telephone reporting. That is a police department-wide policy that's out of my hands. But there is a whole list of, if this, then telephone. If this, then no, it's going to an officer. So those cases, if you call in and say, I just came out to my car, it appears last night the airbag was stolen, and I don't know who did it. Probably going to get sent to the telephone unit. Now, they're going to take your report, and they'll give you a case number, but an officer won't come out. Now, if you say, I have, you know, video evidence or some clues, or I think I know who did it, that will trigger an officer to come out. If there's evidence, if we think there's that, like if you said, hey, some guy broke into my car and this cell phone is in my car, this isn't my cell phone. Or, hey, a guy dropped his ID in here. Yeah, we would love that if someone would drop a clue. But that's going to have an officer come out. So the expansion of the telephone reporting unit is not necessarily a good thing. It's some people like it because they don't have to wait for an officer. They can just be contacted over the phone, like, hey, I'm busy, I got to go, call me. That's good. We like that when people want it, but there's people that necessarily don't want it that are being forced to take it because of the staffing challenges. So I hope one day to get to a place where the telephone reporting unit is, if you want it or not, for your convenience, and an officer if you want it for that. So we're also looking at potentially one day possibly having online reporting where you could even go in and do your own report about what happened. So
okay. And how much, do you have any idea of how much the licensed reader would cost? Just curious.
I don't know. I don't know if you know. It's probably expensive. So $2,500 a year, Tony's estimating for the company, probably for the license, not for the equipment. Yeah.
There's different options.
Yeah, different options.
Can I add something? Like, I'm not sure if the county executive is going to add it into the upcoming budget, which is going to be released on March 15.
Right.
If he does, it will be there. And if he does, I need advocacy. Just saying.
I hear you. Okay. So were there any other questions in the House? No? Going once, twice? No? Okay. Resources on the website. We know that people can get car wheel locks, right? We know that they can get a rebate for their exterior cameras. Someone had requested if the county would be able to add like car covers to that. We'd like to hear back on that, if that's an option. And are there any other resources to deter crime that private citizens, residents such as ourselves, would be able to access through the police department?
So I don't, the car covers, the first time I'm hearing of this, which I'm starting to think about it in my mind, and if they had to lift up a tarp and go under, it might be more difficult. It's not something that, we don't have a program for car covers. That's an interesting thought. But we do have, so I'm going to give you 2 email addresses. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the 3D community at MontgomeryCountyMD.gov is one, and then you have my email address. We have two community service officers. Like I said, one is Brandon McLeod, the new guy, lots of energy. The service that we do provide is if a community member would like our community officer to come to their house, the community officer can come do a security assessment, and we'll say, hey, I would recommend you trim your bushes, you do lights, you do a camera. So we can do that for you if you'd like. We can look at, we'll just make recommendations. You don't have to do anything, you know, and we've done that also for other entities like schools and private schools and different things like that. So that's a service that's available for sure.
Okay, awesome. If we wanted to have that done in our community, say we had people register for that, is that something that we can schedule to have you or your officers come out and do a neighborhood audit, if you will, for safety with recommendations for properties that sign up?
Yeah, we can talk about a lot of stuff during our walk too, which might get everybody at the same time. If you want to make an individual appointment for a assessment, you can just email us, and I'll forward it to the officer. That can be done as well. But I will double down on what the council member said about this community walk. We did this up in Hillendale, and it was very valuable. We had a lot of people come out. Councilmember Mink, that's her area. She was there. We will do the walk with Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez here. But we walked with everybody. The community showed us different things. We talked about different things. And more importantly, we spent time together. And we were able to share, as people had questions, everybody else hears the question and hears the answer. So we can do the individual things. Absolutely, we'll schedule them with you whenever works for you. But then also would love to do the big community thing.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. And the car alarms, is that something that you think you all may have as a resource for those that are in need of them?
That we don't have that program either, and that's a little more complex. It's aftermarket, and it depends on the make model of your vehicle, and there's some other complexities there. But if you don't have a car alarm, you know, I would recommend doing research.
Okay.
Car alarms don't work if they just break the window.
Yeah, there's different.
The car alarms did not, as far as we know, didn't go off because they just broke the windows.
Yeah, so there are different. If they open your door, it'll trigger. Sometimes there's different alarms that do different things depending on how hot fancy it is. But yeah, if it's just like, you know, you lock your door and shut it, it may not go off if they just break the glass and don't do anything else.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Or I think we may be ready to wrap up. So at this time, what we're going to do is just I'll summarize what we've, you know, thought are some good steps forward, and some follow-up areas, and then we can adjourn if no one else has any questions or anything else to add. I feel like it's been a pretty thorough meeting with a lot of good questions. So for wrap-up, we had discussed doing a community walk that may include assessments as a community or individually for neighbors' properties. Streetlights is a part of that and can be done separately, doesn't necessarily need to include. So if any neighbors have any issues with streetlights surrounding their house or in a darkened area of the neighborhood that they would like to communicate so that we can voice getting some more lights and working lights in the neighborhood, then that would be good. That's a good follow-up. Resources, we've already covered that, and we've made some suggestions. Oh, one of them is lug nuts. Is that something that you all are able to offer to people that are not able to afford it?
I'm not aware if we have a lug nut program. That's an interesting, we do encourage the lug nut wheel locks, but we don't have that's not part of our giveaways, but that's an interesting request as well. We would encourage people that are at risk of wheel theft to have those.
Okay. Another area for wrap-up was the drone program, and you were letting us know that there are more things to come in terms of technology that could potentially be used for patrolling at those hours when there's a good bit of crime or issues with crime.
So the patrolling part is not on the table right now.
Right.
That's something that, like I said, it can be done, but that is not a police department decision. That is a community and our elected officials' decision. The elected officials have laid out the guidelines that we have to follow for the program, which we take very seriously. There's no surveillance. There's no proactive patrol. Now, that being said, if somebody calls and says, I see X, Y, and Z, and it's a 911 call, and the drone is operational, then yes, the drone can come and assist in that. So it comes when people call for an emergency. But yeah,
Got it.
the technology piece, which don't hold your breath, we're working on it, but it might be a year or two thing before we can get that kind of turned around with some of the regulatory stuff.
Okay.
Federal government moves a little slow.
Right, right. And let's see. Trying to think, did I miss anything as far as follow-up?
The state issue for anything that deals with criminal law is a statewide, and there's a bill that I'm working on with Senator Jeff Goldstryker, who actually represents Forest Glen, and stay tuned on that bill. And if you guys endorse it, I will love it if you guys can come with me to Annapolis.
Can you send an email out
Yes,
to
once
us?
it's out, yeah, I
Okay,
will.
so we can review it. I think that was pretty much with the wrap-up. Did I miss anything? I'm multitasking here. Nancy.
I think we, as the community, are the #1 thing for dealing with this. Not only recognizing when our own very personal thing is amiss, but hear breaking glass, hear people screaming. Sometimes it's a weird animal, but if you hear something screaming, investigate that. We're neighbors. We must be good neighbors. So being a good neighbor to the police force by reporting things, by giving them something to work with. So personal responsibility, neighborhood responsibility, broader community responsibility, and it goes from there. So the place to start, it's right here.
Absolutely. And I'll say this, if you call the police and you don't feel that you are given the quality of service you'd like, you can email me directly and I'll look into it. We have high standards, but sometimes the officers are so busy running around that they don't take a moment sometimes that they should to just slow down for 10 seconds and maybe explain something a little better for somebody. So we have quality assurance, right? You call and we'll look into it and let you know. So we hope that you always have a great experience with us, but if you ever feel like you were left desiring more, let us know.
Okay, all right. Well, if there's nothing else, we're going to wrap up the meeting. Everybody, thank you so much for coming out. Councilmember Gonzalez and Commander, thank you so much for all the staff and for the meeting space. We appreciate it. Have a good night.